The galaxy had long believed humans were reckless, emotional, and primitive. They were strong, yes. Dangerous in battle, yes. But refined? Noble? Wise in strategy? Most alien empires laughed at the idea, and yet here in the gleaming capital of the Valor Kingdom, one human soldier was about to challenge everything they thought they knew. Sergeant Adrian Cole walked steadily across the polished floor of the arrival hall. The hall stretched hundreds of meters high, walls made of translucent crystal that reflected the faint light of distant stars. The floor seemed alive with soft, glowing patterns that shifted as he moved, tracing paths he did not understand. He wore standard Terran combat armor, battered from countless skirmishes and scorched from plasma fire. Most humans would have been ashamed to enter a royal palace in battle-worn armor, but Adrian did not care. This was not a ceremonial visit. This was war preparation, and he intended to speak the truth, not dance for appearances. From the crystal balconies above, the Valorian nobles watched him with quiet disdain. They glided in graceful, almost liquid movements, their forms shimmering with pale hues of blue and violet. Their heads were elongated slightly, eyes luminescent and unblinking. They whispered to one another through subtle telepathic pulses, a language of emotion and thought rather than sound. "This is the species that fought the Carthax swarm with chemical explosives?" one whispered. "They breathe unfiltered oxygen. They require physical weapons?" How crude. Adrian felt none of their thoughts. He had learned early not to let alien psychics unsettle him. His own mind was trained to remain calm under the most extreme pressure, but he felt the weight of their judgment, pressing down like gravity itself. His jaw remained firm, his shoulders square. He was not here to charm them. He was here because 3 weeks ago, the Carthax swarm had breached Valorian outer defenses. The Carthax were a species of pure destruction. They spread like a dark cloud through star systems, consuming everything in their path. Valorians were advanced, powerful, nearly untouchable in open combat, but their greatest strength was also their weakness. They did not understand chaos. They predicted and calculated every battle down to the last microsecond. Their strategy was flawless on paper, but the swarm did not follow logic. Humans survived chaos. That was Adrian's strength. The royal doors at the far end of the hall slid open without a sound. A figure appeared, moving like a living beam of silver light. Princess Lyriel of Valor entered. Her armor was shaped like art, elegant and sharp, yet protective. A circlet of living crystal rested lightly on her brow, glowing with a faint inner light. Her eyes, also glowing, revealed the faint shimmer of psychic energy radiating from her mind. She was not only royalty, she was the most respected tactician in the galaxy. She commanded fleets larger than some human planets, and her victories had been studied across star systems. She had never met a human soldier and certainly never expected to meet one in person. "So," she said, her voice clear and calm, echoing slightly in the vast hall, "you are the human soldier who claims to understand the swarm."
Adrian bowed slightly, but not too low.
Not enough to show submission. "I don't claim to understand them," he said. "I survived them." A murmur ran through the balconies. Valorian nobles were shocked. They expected arrogance or fear, maybe a plea for help. But Adrian's words were calm and precise. Lyriel's eyes narrowed slightly.
"You are aware," she said, "that your species lost 9 colonies to the swarm before driving them back."
"We survived them. And yet you believe you can advise us." Adrian met her gaze directly, his voice steady. "We didn't drive them back with perfect strategy. We did it by being unpredictable, by sacrificing what we had to survive, by fighting in ways no simulation would approve." The princess's expression flickered. A mix of disbelief and curiosity passed across her face. "Emotion is not strategy," she said. "No," Adrian admitted. But adaptability is. The hall went quiet. Valorians had never valued unpredictability. Their simulations, their battle grids, their entire philosophy revolved around control and precision. Humans, by contrast, thrived in disorder. Humans survived where Valorians would have failed. Princess Lyriel walked closer, her armored boots barely making a sound. She waved a hand, and a three-dimensional holographic map of the current battle zone appeared between them. Hundreds of Valorian ships glimmered in flawless formation around a red glowing swarm fleet. Energy pulses traced the predicted paths of every vessel. Our calculations show an 87% probability of victory, she said, her voice still calm. Adrian studied the hologram for a moment, scanning the formation. He did not speak for a few seconds, letting the image speak for itself. Then he shook his head. "You're already dead," he said simply. Some nobles staggered backward as if struck. Guards raised their energy spears instantly, but Lyriel's hand flicked slightly, and they froze, restrained by her psychic control. "Explain yourself," she demanded, her glowing eyes locking on him. Adrian stepped closer, walking through the projection without hesitation. "They're not attacking directly," he said. "They're hurting you." "That is illogical," she said sharply.
The swarm does not retreat unless weakened. Exactly, he said. They are forcing your fleet into tight formation.
Once compressed, they will release spore mines from concealed carriers. You will win the first clash. Then your ships will destroy each other. The hologram flickered as Lyriel ran simulations at speeds no human brain could follow. Seconds passed. Probabilities changed. Her perfect 87% victory chance began to plummet.
80.
62. 40. 1.
19. The Valorians were frozen in disbelief.
No one had ever considered such a scenario. Their strategies assumed honor and order. The swarm did not care for either. Lyriel finally looked back at Adrian.
"How did you see that?" she asked quietly. "Because they did the same thing to us," he said.
"We only survived because one commander ignored the math and detonated our own supply line to break formation." "You destroyed your own resources?" she asked, shock clear in her voice. "Yes," Adrian said. "It saved 6 billion lives." The room went silent again. Valorians had always valued structure, precision, and minimal loss. Humans valued survival no matter the cost. Lyriel's mind worked faster than anyone in the room. Every calculation, every projection, every possible outcome swirled before her. She dismissed the hologram slowly, feeling the implications settle. "If what you say is true," she said finally, "then our entire tactical philosophy is vulnerable. The swarm fights to win at any cost. Humans fight to survive. That's the difference." The princess studied him for a long moment. She saw no arrogance, no fear, no hesitation, just confidence. Focus, experience, and perhaps for the first time, respect for a human soldier. Then she made a decision that stunned everyone in the hall. "You will accompany me to the command vessel," she said firmly. "You will stand beside me during battle." "A human? Unacceptable! Primitive!" But Lyriel silenced them instantly with a psychic pulse that rippled through the room. "If his insight is correct," she said, her voice cold and commanding, "then logic demands adaptation." "You have astonished this court, Sergeant," she admitted, her voice softer now. "Do not make me regret this." "I won't," he said. Far above the palace, the Carthax swarm shifted position. Their ships were silent and horrifyingly coordinated, moving as one dark entity through the void. They did not care for Valorian honor, for protocols, or for probabilities. They only cared for survival and destruction. And for the first time in Valorian history, they were about to fight a war the human way. Adrian took one last look around the grand hall. The nobles and guards, the crystal walls, the floating platforms, even the princess herself. It all seemed like a dream. But the war was real, and humans had learned something the Valorians had yet to understand. Survival often required breaking every rule. He turned toward the royal doors and walked out, following the princess. In the silence of the chamber, only one truth remained clear. This human soldier would change the course of the battle, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The command vessel floated above Valor's capital like a silver bird poised in silence. Its hull shimmered with energy shields, reflecting starlight and distant nebulae. Inside, the hum of the ship was steady, almost soothing, but the tension was palpable. Every officer, every navigator, every soldier knew what awaited them beyond the void. The Carthax swarm was patient, relentless, and merciless. Princess Lyriel moved through the control deck with precision, her steps echoing lightly on the polished floor. She had dismissed her advisors to make room for Adrian. For hours they had pored over simulations, debating every possible maneuver. The princess did not trust them now. Adrian Cole stood near the projection table, his armor still showing the marks of countless battles. Unlike the Valorian officers, he did not adjust or study the holograms with rapid hands. He observed quietly, his mind parsing patterns and probabilities, not from calculations, but from experience. Lyriel studied him, noting the difference immediately. Her advisors could compute, predict, and simulate endlessly, but Adrian's insight came from instinct tempered by countless life-and-death decisions. She had never encountered a mind like his. The bridge fell silent as the distant sensor readings began to show movement. The swarm fleet had arrived, stretching across the void like a black wave. Millions of ships, countless smaller drones, all moving in terrifying unity. The Valorian crews had been trained to respond with flawless precision, and yet the sight of the swarm caused a ripple of unease. Adrian's voice cut through the tension. They're moving slower than expected.
They're moving!
Patience.
They're waiting for you to make the first mistake. They heard their prey, like I said.
Your prediction was bold, she replied, almost whispering. And accurate. Adrian shrugged.
The swarm is predictable only when you understand unpredictability. Lyriel studied the map again. The swarm's formation was tight, almost perfect, but there were gaps, tiny, almost invisible gaps that Valorian tactical minds would have dismissed as irrelevant. Adrian saw them instantly.
Your formation is too rigid, he said. You need to break it before they force you into compression.
Otherwise, you'll lose ships to friendly fire once the spore carriers release.
A murmur of disbelief ran across the deck. Valorian officers were trained to obey and trust simulations. Break formation? That was heresy. But the princess remained calm, her glowing eyes fixed on Adrian.
Show me, she said.
He moved his hands over the hologram, tracing a path through asteroids, nebulae, and debris fields. You need to create chaos within your own fleet before they do it for you. Move the left wing slightly off-grid. Scatter your frigates unpredictably.
Use the asteroid clusters as shields. They won't expect it.
Lyriel considered him for a long moment. Every nerve in her body screamed against abandoning calculated strategy. But the evidence was undeniable. This human had seen beyond their models. Do it, she ordered. The bridge erupted in controlled activity. Commands were transmitted, shields redirected, thrusters adjusted. The fleet shifted. It was a delicate ballet of chaos and precision. Ships moved unpredictably yet remained under control. The Valorian officers watched, half in fear, half in awe, as their perfect formation became something else, something unpredictable, yet effective. Moments later, the swarm reacted. Thousands of small carriers detached from the main fleet, releasing their spore mines. But instead of finding tightly packed Valorian ships, the mines scattered into empty space. The initial strike failed to breach the fleet's shields. The crew held their breath. Adrian watched quietly, calm as always. "They won't give up," he said softly. "Never do. They'll try again, differently." And they did. The swarm's next wave came faster, more aggressive. Their ships moved in jagged, unpredictable patterns. The Valorian fleet, now partially scattered, had to adapt. Pilots who had trained for years in perfect alignment suddenly had to trust instincts, not simulations. The chaos was terrifying. And yet, under Lyriel's command and Adrian's guidance, they survived. Adrian gave orders calmly, almost like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Frigates on the left. Draw them closer to the nebula. Destroy the smaller carriers as they pass. Cruiser 3, flank the right. Don't hesitate. Predict what they expect, then do the opposite." Valorian officers repeated his commands, their initial resistance fading into action. They saw results immediately. The swarm, used to precise targets and predictable fleets, was confused by the irregular maneuvers. Several carriers collided. Drones were caught in the paths of larger Valorian ships. The humans' tactics, simple in words but revolutionary in practice, began to shift the battle. Princess Lyriel's mind raced alongside Adrian's. Her psychic awareness allowed her to feel patterns in the swarm's swarm-like unity, but she had never thought to manipulate them through chaos. Humans did not calculate. They adapted. They survived. And now, the humans' instincts were teaching her something she had never imagined. Hours passed, and the battle stretched across light years of space. Explosions painted the darkness in fiery streaks, while the hum of shields and the crackle of energy weapons filled the void. Adrian remained calm, issuing precise commands when necessary, but never panicking. His calmness had a strange effect on the Valorian crews. They began to trust him, not just the princess. At one point, a massive Carthax battleship approached undetected, its massive energy cannon aimed at the command vessel. Sensors failed to flag it in time. The Valorian bridge froze in terror, but Adrian reacted instantly. "Divert all power to the forward shields. Prepare counter-fire on my mark. Left wing, flank hard now. I'll draw them closer." But did not hesitate. "Do it!" The command vessel and several cruisers executed the maneuver. The massive Carthax ship moved into the nebula, its vision impaired by dust and gas. Adrian's prediction proved correct. The ship's main cannon misfired, striking one of its own carriers and creating a chain reaction that destroyed part of the swarm's advance line. The bridge erupted in astonishment. Valorian officers, usually flawless in strategy, were now reacting to intuition guided by a human soldier. Chaos had become a weapon, and the human wielded it with precision. Lyriel's mind was racing. Every instinct told her to be cautious, to follow the rules, to keep her fleet in perfect formation. But Adrian's approach was working. Every risk taken was calculated from experience, not simulation, and each risk was paying off. The battle continued through the long hours of Valorian space-time. Ships were lost, but the losses were controlled. The swarm began to falter, confused by the unpredictable movements and the human-driven strategies. Adrian's instincts seemed to anticipate their every response. He adapted faster than the swarm could react, and under his guidance, the Valorian fleet slowly began to take the upper hand. At one point, Lyriel looked at him, her glowing eyes revealing awe she rarely showed. "You fight differently," she said softly, almost to herself. Adrian smiled faintly. We fight to survive. That's the difference. For the first time, she understood. Valorians calculated for victory, but humans calculated for survival. Logic alone could not defeat the swarm. Survival required unpredictability, instinct, and the courage to break the rules. By the end of the long, grueling battle, the swarm began a retreat, not complete, not total, but enough to signal a temporary halt. The Valorian fleet was battered but intact, and for the first time in history, it had been saved by chaos rather than perfect calculation. Princess Lyriel turned to Adrian. Her expression was unreadable at first, then slowly softened.
"You have changed everything," she said. "I never expected this." "Not from a human," Adrian shrugged lightly.
We humans are full of surprises. The crew, once skeptical, now looked at him with respect. The human soldier had not only survived the battle, but he had also taught the Valorians a lesson they would never forget. They had learned that perfection in strategy could be their undoing, and that sometimes unpredictability was the key to survival. As the fleet regrouped and repaired, Adrian stood on the bridge, looking at the stars beyond. The swarm would return, stronger and more dangerous. But this time, he was not alone. The Valorian fleet had learned something new. Their most brilliant tactician had learned something new. And somewhere deep inside, Adrian smiled. Humanity had survived chaos before. Humanity would survive again. And now, an entire alien empire was learning to do the same. The aftermath of the first battle left the Valorian fleet scattered but alive. Repairs were underway and the command vessel hovered silently above the capital planet. The stars seemed calm, but Adrian knew better. The Carthax swarm never slept, and every second of respite was temporary. Princess Lyriel stood on the observation deck, her glowing eyes fixed on the swirling repair fields below. The human soldier stood beside her, silent, calm, as if the destruction they had witnessed meant nothing. He had a way of carrying the weight of war lightly, a quality that unsettled some and inspired others.
You move through danger without fear, Lyriel said quietly, almost to herself.
I do not understand it. I do not ignore it. I accept it. Fear slows you down, makes you hesitate.
"Hesitation kills." She considered his words.
Valorians had been taught to calculate every possible risk, to plan for every contingency, but their planning was limited by their reliance on structure. Humans adapted, survived, and improvised. That was something Valorians did not fully comprehend until now. Adrian turned to her, voice calm and firm.
The swarm will strike again. They are regrouping.
They will test every weakness. The question is, will you be ready to act differently? Lyriel's mind raced. She had been a tactician all her life. She had studied battles fought and lost across the galaxy. Yet, nothing in her experience had prepared her for a human approach to war. Logic and calculation were powerful, but instinct and adaptability were equally deadly when applied correctly. She finally nodded. I will follow your lead.
Teach me.
The command crew glanced at the exchange, some skeptical, some curious. To them, Valorian tactics were sacred, and questioning them was dangerous. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Adrian's methods had saved the fleet. The next threat came faster than anyone expected. Sensors detected a massive Carthax strike force approaching a neighboring planet rich in rare minerals, crucial for Valorian war production. The planet's defenses were strong, but a direct assault would overwhelm conventional strategies. Lyriel and Adrian reviewed the attack projections. Every scenario suggested catastrophic losses if they followed standard tactics. Ships would be destroyed, colonies would be lost, and the swarm would advance closer to the capital. Adrian studied the data for a moment, then shook his head.
You are looking at this the wrong way.
You plan for survival of structure. I plan for survival of life. Lyriel's eyes narrowed. Explain. They will hit you where you expect least.
They will feint, mislead, force you into rigid responses. You cannot outthink them with logic alone. You have to move unpredictably, like water, flexible, flowing, unstoppable. The princess hesitated, weighing the risk to scatter her fleet, abandon the projected defensive grid, and fight without perfect order was unheard of, but the human's record spoke for itself. He had survived battles that logic said were impossible. "Very well," she said at last. "We do this your way." "Good. But you must trust me completely. Any hesitation will be fatal." The fleet launched, stars rushing past as they moved into battle positions. The swarm waited, as Adrian predicted, using the planet's orbital debris to mask their approach. Sensors flickered under interference from the Carthax electronic jamming. Baelorian officers panicked slightly, but Lyriel held firm. She followed Adrian's instructions, altering formations, moving frigates unpredictably, sending smaller units to flank and mislead. Adrian's calm voice guided them. "Distract them here. Force their attention to the north. Use the asteroid field as cover.
Don't engage until I give the signal." The first wave of swarm fighters struck, but the Violorian fleet was not where the enemy expected.
Some ships drew fire intentionally, acting as decoys, while the main fleet moved through the shadows of asteroid belts. Mines and plasma charges detonated harmlessly against empty space. Lyriel felt her pulse quicken. The human strategy was working, but it was risky. Any misstep could destroy part of the fleet instantly. Yet every move Adrian suggested seemed counterintuitive and perfect simultaneously. "Now!" he shouted. Valoran cruisers surged from cover, attacking the exposed flanks of the swarm. Mines detonated near Carthax carriers, crippling them before they could unleash their payloads. The humans' instincts predicted every reaction of the swarm's formations. Where the Valorians would have relied on perfect lines, Adrian relied on movement, improvisation, and surprise. Princess Lyriel watched in awe as the fleet executed the maneuvers flawlessly. Ships twisted and turned unpredictably, weaving between explosions, yet remained coordinated. The swarm was thrown into confusion, its own formations colliding, drones destroyed by the very paths it intended to use for attack. Hours passed, and the battle became a test of endurance. Valorian ships, once thought incapable of improvisation, now adapted, guided by a human soldier who refused to accept the limits of strategy. Adrian moved across the command bridge, issuing commands with quiet authority, never raising his voice, never panicked. At one point, a massive Carthax battleship attempted to break through the fleet's center. Its energy cannon was ready to fire, but Adrian predicted its movement, redirecting frigates to intercept and drawing the ship into the planetary debris field. Trapped among the rocks, the Carthax vessel misfired, detonating its own energy reserves and causing a chain reaction that destroyed several smaller enemy ships. The crew gasped in astonishment. Valorian tactics had never produced such outcomes. The humans' understanding of survival in chaos had rewritten the rules of engagement. Lyriel approached Adrian, her eyes wide with realization. "You do not follow logic the way we do," she said softly.
You fight for life, not perfection, and yet it works.
Logic only predicts the expected. Life is never expected.
You must adapt, or you die. The battle continued, with the swarm attempting to regroup and strike again.
Adrian anticipated their movements, issuing orders to exploit weaknesses in their formations. Valorian ships moved unpredictably, creating opportunities to disable carriers, destroy drones, and protect vital installations on the planet below. By nightfall, the swarm was retreating. Not entirely, but enough to signal a temporary victory. The planet remained under Valorian control, its resources intact, and the fleet had survived without catastrophic loss. Princess Lyriel stood beside Adrian, looking out at the retreating enemy. She felt a strange mix of exhilaration and respect. She had trained for decades, studied every possible scenario. Yet the human soldier had guided them through a battle that no simulation could have predicted. "You have changed everything," she said quietly. "I thought we were prepared."
I thought our strategy was perfect. But you see what we cannot.
We all see what we are trained to see. Sometimes survival requires looking beyond training, beyond rules.
Humans do it by instinct. You do it by choice. Today, you chose well.
Valorian officers began murmuring among themselves, astonished by the human's impact.
Some were reluctant to admit it, but the evidence was clear. Their fleet had survived impossible odds because of him. They had learned a lesson that no textbook could teach. Flexibility, unpredictability, and the willingness to break rules were as important as precision and planning. Lyriel turned to him again. "The swarm will return," she said. "Stronger, smarter, more relentless."
Adrian nodded.
"And we will be ready. They may adapt, but so will we."
Humans always adapt. The princess studied him for a long moment, realizing that she had underestimated the strength of human ingenuity.
They had thought humans were primitive, emotional, unpredictable. But now she saw their true power, the ability to survive against impossible odds, to defy expectation, and to teach even the most disciplined alien empire a lesson in resilience. The command deck quieted as the fleet regrouped. Ships floated in formation above the planet, repairs underway, shields charged, and crews exhausted but alive. Adrian remained near the projection table, scanning sensor readings, predicting potential counterattacks. The princess watched him, no longer a student, but an equal partner in thought. Somewhere deep in the void, the swarm regrouped, planning their next assault. They did not yet understand the human influence on the Valorian fleet, nor did they realize that the rules of engagement had fundamentally changed. The battle was far from over, but the first step had been taken. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A human soldier leading an alien empire to survive where logic alone would have failed. Adrian finally stepped back from the projection, his calm presence a counterpoint to the adrenaline and chaos of battle. He glanced at the princess. "They'll come again," he said simply. Lyriel nodded. "And we will meet them differently." Adrian allowed himself the faintest smile. "Exactly. That's why humans survive." The stars outside the viewport sparkled in cold silence, but within the command vessel, a new understanding had taken root. The Valorian Empire had learned to fight not just with perfection, but with adaptability. The swarm would return, but the outcome would no longer be certain. For the first time, an entire fleet, and one princess, understood the value of unpredictability, instinct, and courage. And in that understanding lay a spark of hope, a seed that would grow into something far greater than strategy, trust between species, and faith in the human spirit. The silence of space felt heavier than the roar of battle. The Valorian fleet floated above the outer rim of the planet Lyris, awaiting the return of the Carthax swarm. Repairs had been made, shields recharged, crews rested. But no one on the bridge of the command vessel felt safe. The swarm was relentless. They had survived defeat, learned from mistakes, and were returning stronger than ever. Princess Lyriel moved among the officers, her glowing eyes calm but focused. Her hand brushed over the edge of the projection table as she reviewed sensor data. Every calculated variable predicted disaster if they followed conventional tactics. Every option led to losses. Yet she had learned something new in the past battles. Logic alone could no longer dictate their actions. Instinct and unpredictability were equally powerful. Adrian Cole stood beside her, armor still bearing minor scratches from earlier engagements. He had spent hours reviewing the swarm's behavior, predicting their strategy, and advising the fleet. He did not show fear, only certainty. That certainty gave the Valorians something they had not had before: confidence in the impossible.
They're coming faster this time, Adrian said, his voice steady.
And they've learned some of our patterns. But that doesn't matter.
We'll change the game again. Lyriel's brow furrowed slightly.
How? He gestured toward the holographic projection. The swarm expects reaction. They follow logic. They anticipate that we'll follow their traps. We won't. We will lead them into our own choice of chaos. The crew turned to him, some skeptical, others desperate for guidance. The princess had already made her decision.
Do it your way, she said firmly. Every move, every command.
You lead.
Adrian nodded.
Good. Everyone, trust me. Any hesitation, and we fail. But follow exactly as I say, and we survive. And we win. The fleet shifted into formation under his guidance, seemingly chaotic but deliberate. Ships darted and twisted unpredictably, weaving between asteroid fields and plasma debris, drawing the swarm closer into a trap the humans and Valorians had prepared together. The first wave of Carthax fighters approached in jagged formation. They aimed for the conventional positions, expecting to exploit weaknesses. Instead, they encountered scattered frigates, firing from multiple angles, intercepting carriers and destroying drones before they could attack. The human-led maneuvers disrupted the enemy completely.
Lyriel watched, astonished.
The swarm was massive, terrifying in scale, and yet it faltered in the face of unpredictability. Ships collided, carriers were disabled, drones misfired. Every action Adrian predicted matched the swarm's response exactly. Hours passed. The battle stretched across space like a living storm. Explosions lit the void, plasma and debris weaving a deadly tapestry. The Valorian fleet moved like a single organism, guided by the human soldier whose instincts defied conventional logic. Then came the critical moment. A massive Carthax flagship, larger than any other, emerged from the nebula, its energy cannon aimed directly at the planet below. Its destruction would obliterate colonies and supply stations vital to the Valorian war effort. "Do you see it?" Lyriel whispered, awe in her voice.
"I do," Adrian replied calmly. "And we'll make sure it doesn't fire."
He studied the fleet and the projection. The flagship was powerful but predictable in its own pattern. Its immense size made it less agile than the smaller ships, and its crew relied on the same logic the swarm had always followed. Adrian devised a plan.
Frigates, split into 2 groups. Draw its fire toward the debris field.
Cruisers circle behind it, silently. Wait for the right moment.
"I'll signal when to strike." The bridge erupted in quiet activity.
Valorian officers followed his commands, some skeptical, some trusting, but all obeying. The fleet moved as Adrian instructed, twisting and darting in unpredictable paths. The massive Carthax ship fired, but its energy beams missed every target, striking only empty space and the debris it had been lured into. Adrian counted silently. Then he raised his hand. Now. The cruisers surged from cover, striking the flagship's rear engines. Plasma beams tore through armor, explosions rippling across its hull. The ship shuddered violently. The swarm flagship attempted evasive maneuvers, but Adrian's prediction had anticipated every move. Another strike hit its energy core, destabilizing it further. The princess could hardly believe her eyes. The human soldier had orchestrated an attack that no simulation could have predicted. No Valorian tactician could have planned. The flagship exploded in a blinding flare of fire and energy, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Smaller swarm vessels scattered, confused and leaderless. Adrian's calm voice cut through the noise. "Don't stop. Keep pushing. Hit every carrier while they are vulnerable." Valorian ships surged, striking every exposed target. The swarm's coherence collapsed. Hundreds of carriers and fighters were destroyed. The remaining swarm retreated into deep space, battered and disorganized. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, cheers began. Officers looked at Adrian with newfound respect. Lyriel's glowing eyes were wide, a mixture of relief, admiration, and awe. "You have done what no Valorian could," she said softly. "You have turned the tide."
"We did it together. The fleet adapted."
"You adapted. We survived because we chose unpredictability. That's the difference."
The princess studied him, understanding dawning.
For decades, Valorians had relied on logic, calculation, and perfect formation. Humans fought for survival, bending rules, improvising, and trusting instinct. Today, that approach had saved billions of lives. Today, humans had proven themselves not primitive, but exceptional. Lyriel walked through the bridge, touching consoles, adjusting shields, and issuing orders. She worked in tandem with Adrian, relying on his instincts while using her psychic awareness to coordinate the fleet. For the first time, the human and the princess fought as equals, their strategies intertwined, their minds working in harmony. As the last of the swarm withdrew, the fleet regrouped. Ships were damaged but repairable. The planet below remained safe. For the first time, Valorian citizens could breathe without fear of annihilation. The battle was won, but more importantly, a new understanding had emerged. Adrian stood at the edge of the observation deck, looking at the distant stars. The galaxy was vast, and the swarm would return. They were relentless, and their numbers were endless. Yet today, humans and Valorians had survived together, and they had learned that survival required more than logic. It required courage, adaptability, and the willingness to challenge assumptions. Lyriel approached him, her armor gleaming softly in the light of distant stars. "I owe you my thanks," she said. "No Valorian could have done what you just did."
"I underestimated your species."
Adrian gave a small smile. "You didn't underestimate us. You just hadn't seen how far we'll go to survive. You'll remember this in every battle that comes next." The princess nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Humans were unpredictable, yes. Emotional, yes. But also resilient, courageous, and cunning in ways the Valorians had never imagined. Adrian's presence had not only saved lives, but had reshaped the way an entire empire thought about war. "Humans have surprises," Adrian said quietly. "And we always survive." Lyriel's eyes glowed softly.
"Then perhaps we are lucky to have one among us." In the quiet that followed, the fleet drifted through the void, battle-worn but alive.
Stars sparkled coldly around them, but hope burned brightly within the command vessel. Today, a human soldier had astonished a princess, led an alien fleet to victory, and changed the course of a war. Today, humanity had proven that survival, courage, and instinct were as powerful as any fleet, any weapon, or any calculation. And for the first time, Princess Lyriel knew that humans were not what the galaxy had underestimated. They were its most astonishing weapon. The stars outside the viewport seemed calmer now, but deep in the darkness of space, the Carthax swarm retreated, silent, dangerous, and defeated for the moment. They would return, as all predators do, but this time, the Valorian fleet, guided by a human soldier, would be ready. Adrian turned back to the bridge, placing his hands lightly on the projection table. The fleet was ready for the next wave, and this time, they would meet it as one. Lyriel stood beside him, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had survived chaos together. They had turned defeat into victory, and they had done what no one thought possible. They had proven that humanity, unpredictable and resilient, could astonish even the most advanced alien civilization in the galaxy. The command vessel soared forward, leading the fleet toward new battles, toward new victories, and toward a future where humans would never again be underestimated. And somewhere deep in the void, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging the courage, ingenuity, and determination of a single human soldier who had changed the fate of a galaxy.